Apple is doubling down on privacy. Basically, they've gone through all of their a lot of their apps, including Siri, Maps, Contacts, and things like that, and made the security side of things a lot more agile and allowing you to restrict a lot of access from third parties and things. So this can only be seen as a good thing. And I think we discussed on a previous podcast about how even though Apple is the big giant tech company, they're probably the most
they're the only one
secure.
who actually care about privacy.
Yep. And it's, I suppose,
as we've said before, Apple was the only one of the big five. Well, Apple and Microsoft, the only two of the big five tech companies that doesn't make its money off advertising.
Yep.
It's the only one that doesn't make its money off selling your data, basically.
Yep.
So, of course, it's going to be the one that cares about security. Because obviously it's his big selling point.
And especially like the App Store, let's say, is a lot more restricted than the Google Play Store. Like what data is being accessed and why it's being accessed and from how long and is all monitored pretty strictly from Apple. So if there's an app that's kind of seen to be breaking these rules, as it were, they're very quick to remove that app. So it's personally,
it's
this
like
is
how when Pokemon Go came out, it was saying like 30 million Android users were hacked, wasn't they?
Yeah.
But that's because Android just allowed like 10 or 20 fake Pokemon Go apps, whereas Apple only allowed the original one because they're very careful of what they allow in their app store.
Yeah, and I suppose that comes with the territory of having, building the phone, having the operating system, and running the app store and controlling all of that. Whereas you have got your Google phones. Don't get me wrong, with their operating system and their app store, but I think it's fair to say that Apple has got the ecosystem a bit more concrete than most other phones, if I'm not mistaken. Or sorry, most other phone manufacturers.
Say that again, sorry, they have what?
So Apple obviously builds the phones, they build the operating system, and they have the App Store, right? Whereas Google,
Yes.
let's say, they do build the phones, but not every phone that uses Android is Google made. So it's you can't control third parties' hardware, So it's...
Whereas if you're buying Apple, everything about Apple is Apple.
Yep.
There is no third party involvement.
That's true. Yeah, that's right. And I mean, the thing with Apple is, I don't really think, when it comes to them as a company, I don't really think it's outlined enough that they are someone who cares a lot about privacy. And the things they do, which actually are very, very good, very, very positive, are sort of overlooked. And I think a big reason for that is, the main reason people don't like Apple, and let's be honest, if you ask anyone, why don't you like Apple? Then they'll say they release the same shit every year, just looks different, and it's too expensive. That's usually people's justification for not liking Apple. But even in this article, there's they talk about what they do in terms not just with security, but with what they do with the stuff how they scan what gets put on the cloud, for example.
Yep.
They are scanning for stuff that's focuses around, that's sort of centered around child abuse, and they get rid of that. They target things like that, and they target the people that are doing it, and that is good. It's a very positive thing for them to be doing. I was going to say, Apple, coming back to what you said about them manufacturing it and having the App Store and everything, and it may, because of that may be a good indication of why they have the largest market share in the world when it comes to mobile phones.
Oh, is it the largest market share?
Yes, it is. It's Apple has the largest share, followed by Samsung, followed by Huawei, or however you want to say it. And then after that, you've obviously got HTC is actually...
Oh, you mean as in the actual hardware, not the software? Because I imagine there's probably more Android phones now, isn't there?
Oh yeah, there's more Android phones, but in terms of manufacturers, Apple has the largest share.
Sure.
And then I think, Motorola and stuff, who are still kicking, and HTC, they have 2% of the share and 1%. It's, they're doing all right, I guess. So it's like there's something that obviously keeps people coming back, and some of it you can put down to just brand loyalty, because obviously that is a thing. It's the same across any brand, but there are clearly benefits, and there are clearly good things about the company that I do disagree with their manufacturing process and like where it's made and the factories, but if you let's not look past that. But obviously, in terms of their sensitivity to privacy and their other security features, I suppose they are quite, they're at the top of the game in some respects.
You've got to remember, like, was it maybe not last year, the year before, they got in that big court case with the FBI about unlocking one of their phones.
Yeah, and they refused to. It was a mass shoot or a terrorist's phone, wasn't it? And they refused to unlock it.
Yeah, and at the time, Apple got a lot of, they didn't have much people in support of that decision. A lot of people was against it. But Apple was straight up like, we care about privacy, and this is a matter of setting precedents. If we do it once, if we do it once because it's a mass shooter, even though we kind of want to do it now, but it means, when you catch someone who's selling weed, you can also force us to do it then.
Exactly. Like it's like a teacher giving special treatment. But if they make an exception for one student, they have to do it for everyone, really.
And it wasn't really something Apple wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. So they stuck to their morals. They stood their ground with it.
Definitely.
And it was very controversial.
Yeah, I think you used the key word there, precedent. I mean, if anything, they've basically said, "Hey guys, this is how you handle privacy. You don't back down when pressure's put on you. You make sure that there's never exceptions, and it's always, you give the users full exposure and understanding of what data is being collected when." Because recently, as well, after a couple of iOS updates, you do get the notifications that say, "Just to let you know, Google Maps has used your location 63 times in the last 2 weeks." And then it gives you the option to turn off, turn on only when the apps are being used and things like that. So I think, we need to get to a point in tech where privacy isn't a selling point. Privacy just is. And there should be a standard of, okay, these technology privacy issues should be a thing of the past, and kind of, all right, that was an issue then, but everyone got up to speed and saw how we should be doing it. We made the standards. Now let's move on to making phones with decent cameras in. We shouldn't. Yeah. Privacy shouldn't be a selling point. It should be a standard and followed by everybody, in my opinion.
I completely agree. Like, I do think that in a lot of respects, actually, not just with things like that, but even with app usage, for example. Like, I think I mentioned this last week or the week before. You download an app, you have to agree to give certain data over, otherwise you're not allowed to use that app. I agree completely. Privacy should be the standard. It shouldn't be, a company shouldn't have a reason to buy their product because they say, "Oh yeah, we care about this privacy. We're sensitive to this." Well, no, like, you should be sensitive to that always. Like, it shouldn't be being used as like your little marketing tactic. Like, that should be the all-round norm. But some people would argue it's a little too late for something like that, because
that's not a fault on Apple, though.
No, absolutely not. No,
that's the fault on all. That's the fault on all the other phones not being up to date. That's a fault on a lot of things. So that even comes down to like the data protection laws. Like, before obviously there a lot of that's at blame as well. But that's the problem with anything like this. Anything in tech is you can't. It's hard to regulate something which is constantly evolving and constantly changing. And data protection and data privacy is one of those things. It always has been, and there's been an increase in surveillance, for example, in society over the past 2 decades or 3 decades, whatever have you. But yeah, no, it should be the norm. But at this point, like I said, there are some people that would argue it's too late for that. We've already put so much of our data out there that even if we did go completely private now, there's so much out there that it's too little, too late. Where some would disagree, others not, and I'm very on the fence with that one. Like, I do think we're in a time now where I think it is almost a little bit too late to be so conscious of that. Like,
you can't pretend that you can't be one of those people that says, I don't exist online, because at the end of the day, I think everyone does at this point. I think there are very few people that that don't exist online.
Yeah, we've said before about how it's the sort of thing where you just can't do it now in society.
No, that's right.
Society has an expectation of you being a part of Facebook or you using Google. You can't live through society without doing them things.
And it's not even just with Facebook, is it? It's with pretty much anything. Like, even when you go and sign contracts in person, like if you sign a contract for a mobile phone, for example, your data's still being put into a system somewhere, and you're still ending up on on the web in one form or another. So, and everything is virtualized now. Is virtualized even a word? Digitalized? We'll go with that. Fact check me on that one.
No, virtualized, yeah.
Is it? Okay, good. Yeah. Either way, everything has this digital age. All of the information, even the stuff that we have, especially the stuff we have no control over, like the stuff in our everyday lives. All of that information, you make a payment you buy a sandwich on your card, for example. The details of your transaction, your name and the bank and your sort code, whatever have you. I don't really know how those systems work entirely, but either way, they all go online. Like, that's where it's all kept and stored. So it doesn't really matter how conscious you are of your privacy online in your personal life. Like everything else in life, there's no way to avoid it. Like, you can't go through life without giving away data now. So
true, but you can, I agree with that.
You can be careful, and once again, coming back to it for like these personal products like mobile phones, I do think privacy is very important, and it should be it should be just a given for any product you go with. But
that's the thing. I don't necessarily agree that it's too little, too late. I think what we've seen in the past and leading up to where we are now is an example of what can happen, i.e. the breaches that have happened and X, Y, and Z, and almost allowing us to go, okay, that's what could happen, that's what is happening, what do we need to do to fix this? And the fact that it's in the conversation and we see news articles such as this one means that the debate isn't over yet. People aren't at a point where they're like, okay, my stuff's secured now, I'm all good. And as I said, it shouldn't be a selling point. It should be oh wait, you mean Apple wasn't secure in the first place? We should be shocked about them doing this, because that almost suggests that they aren't secure. We should not see articles like this, because it's just implying that everyone else isn't secure.
But once again, coming back to it, it's when people were asked, literally over half of the people that were asked about the data protection and their privacy, they said they didn't care. So that's the problem. Like, if we can't have both, like, obviously there are a lot of people that do care, but as long as we have that, if that doesn't change, where half the people using these if that doesn't change, that where all of it, think of it like pack mentality. Like, if half of the population of the internet, if you will, doesn't care about privacy and the other half does, it's like there are I wouldn't say exploit, because that's a heavy word, but there's still risks in that in its own right.
Yeah, but like, we should be able to give people who aren't necessarily as worried about where their data is and what it's being used for, the ability to give that data over and have a more of a convenient service. Like we said, like, the data should be able to be used from them, which completes search results, which shows previous locations, and that should be one thing. We should also give the people that want to have the chemtrails are taking over the world and the lizard men the option to actually be off the grid, kind of thing, have no connection. Absolutely. but with a direct kind of, hey, look, you can do this, but half our stuff won't work properly, and then don't complain when you can't find what you were looking for 2 days ago. There should be a middle ground, because they're in the game of, I'm talking about phone manufacturers and tech companies, they're in the game of keeping people using a product, whether it's for data collection, whether it's for the product itself on a subscription, keeping people using it. And if they want to make people use it, they have to appeal to like the spectrum of types of people that are out there.
Yeah,
but
of course. No, I agree. It's I'm no businessman, so like there's probably a lot of intricacies when it comes to things like this to deal with, and I have no doubt there's a lot of loops to jump through as well. Like, and at the end of the day, you can't really please everyone either. Like, even if these companies turn around and said, all right, like, here's all of our new privacy policies, we have this, this, and this, but, this is the stuff we'll still continue to collect, whatever have you. There's always going to be someone that turns around and says, no, this is too much, I'm not happy with this. So that's another problem. Like, it's a very hard game to play because, it's such a vast subject that it's almost impossible to find the perfect medium for it. Like, how much is too much and how much is too little, It's like, you can't really estimate it, can you?
No, I agree.
It's trial and error in a lot of respects. Like, once again, how do you judge how do you write the laws and regulations for something which is constantly evolving and constantly changing? And, as these changes come in, you have even more security risks. Like, you can't be in two places at the same time. You can't outthink these people. Like the hacker group who found a way around the two-factor authentication. Like, we didn't really think it was going to happen so soon, but it did. But how could anyone have predicted that?
Yeah, and you've also got to remember, like, even if you are off the grid, as it were, no online presence or whatever it is, that, as you said, is almost making yourself stand out. So
yes, yeah.
That's kind of going against what you were trying to achieve in the first place, Like,
exactly.
If you walk down the street with a ghillie suit on, people are going to look and go, why has that guy got a ghillie suit on? Whereas if everyone is using that, I know it's a shit analogy, but I'm just saying,
no, that's
you can stand out like a sore thumb and be totally anonymous. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, for example, with the Tor browser or the Onion router or whatever, if you use that on a network where everyone is using standard network connections,
you stand out. You're like a cigarette in a fireworks factory.
Exactly. Yeah. So who's this guy doing completely different compared to everyone else?
And then that prompts the question. Like, in that scenario, you're always going to have someone that says, "Okay, what's this guy up to?"
Exactly.
Whereas if you were using Google like everyone else, they just consider it business as usual. But like, if you stand out like that, that's more reason to click on you and find out what you're doing and see if you're up to anything you shouldn't be up to. Yeah, I completely.
Yeah, it's tough though, because there is a line, and everyone's got their own sort of reading of where they stand on. I don't like my data being anywhere, and I want to give it all away. I'm probably more towards the give most of it away if it allows me to use the service correctly. But then there's that bit where, let me know what you're doing with it so I can choose to not give it to you,
Of course, and I mean, even, for something that people can probably relate to a little bit more with things like this is, think like Steam. Steam in its own right collects information on what you play and what you like on the store, and then it will suggest games to you games and programs that it thinks are suited to you. Like, if you think of it in that respect as well, like, if you suddenly lost that, you're going to constantly get games suggested to you that aren't for you, and it's just, you lose some of the convenience. Like, you do sacrifice a lot of the convenience in a scenario like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't think data collection is as evil as some people claim it to be, but I do think there is such a thing as giving away too much. But I don't think it's right to assume that we should immediately all be trying to give away as little as possible. Like, and once again, it also does depend on how the company intends on using that data. I think nowadays more of the concern isn't so much how, well, give or take, it's not always so much about how the company uses it, but more the risk. There's been a lot of data breaches, and I think people were very reluctant over, putting data out there because of things like that, and it's like, Cambridge Analytica and things like that, and then you do get a lot of breaches, and some of them can cause a lot of damage, and I think people are more scared of that than they are of getting tailored advertisements.
Yeah, the people's opinions on privacy is sort of a spectrum, isn't it? And obviously the correct answer is somewhere on the spectrum, we just haven't found it yet. There's definitely like a bit of a middle ground
Yeah,
that
once
we
again,
just need to find.
finding
Yeah,
the perfect medium is difficult.
yeah, because obviously the way like Google, Amazon, and Facebook do it is just too much, because you do get problems like
Yeah.
Cambridge Analytica, and you get data breaches and whatnot, and maybe Apple does do it too far the other way, or maybe people who go on DuckDuckGo are going too far the other way. There's definitely a middle ground that we need to find now, where your data is secure, but at the same time, you're not just losing out on the convenience, because 99% of the stuff that we have in the modern world is all based around the idea of convenience.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
I mean, that is the business. That's the business model for a lot of things now. It's
Yeah.
how can we make this aspect of life more convenient?
I sacrificed the privacy of my own home by having an Alexa, purely because I'm too lazy to turn the lights off.
I know, and then yeah, that's
Right.
the thing. Like, I've got a Google Home, and if I want to put music on, I can just speak to that, and it will do it for me.
Yeah.
And I always have Google Home unmuted, mostly. Like, and I think it was my brother that said to me, he's like, "Do you not mute your no, it's Dalek again. Yeah, do you not mute your Google Home?" I was like, "No, why would I?" Like, I'm not. Yeah, obviously, it's always listening for when it's being addressed, but I'm very on the fence with things like that. Like, I am conscious of it, but I don't necessarily believe it's like listening to my every word and like looking
No.
for key phrases and trying to nail me for something.
I think a good example of what we're trying to get at is the people who had the camera in the children's bedroom.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
That's very convenient, obviously, to use as a tool, like a baby monitor.
There was
But at the
someone
same time,
out there who knew how to exploit
yeah,
it.
for the same time, to have that convenience, there was obviously a security issue, and in that one couple's case, that security issue was, penetrated, and an issue arose from it.
Exactly, and another example, the smart doorbell. There was I think we talked about that. It basically, as long as someone knew what they were doing, they could get all of like your network security information.
Yeah.
So, and that's not a fault of, well, it is a fault of the product, but at the same time, it's one of those things that you can't, developers can't always predict things like that. They can't always see things like that happening, just because, and it's, once again, the danger there was someone found a way around like the security or the lack of, on that product, and they exploited that. And I think once again, it's things like that that get people so jumpy. Like, that alone is what would put me off of ever buying a doorbell like that, at least from that brand. I'd constantly think of that. Like, what if someone breaches my network just by hacking my doorbell? It sounds bizarre, but it's like the age we live in.
Exactly.
That's also
Yeah.
part of this like unwritten contract we have, we have this unwritten contract where we give privacy over for convenience, but we also all know at some point that data might be exploited for a small group of people, and that small group of people might include you. It's just all something we live with.
And also, like, I know we're going off a little bit off track here, but if you put a camera in a room that has people sleeping in it and you put it online, no amount of security is going to protect you entirely, and it has to be part down to the individual to be like, okay, such and such could happen, so do you accept those risks? That's the way that I see it. It's not all about like, oh, I put this camera, I don't know, in my living room, and then now it can see me, and someone online can see it. I understand it's down to the manufacturer of the camera itself, but there are times where it takes two to tango with these people.
It does. And obviously obviously you do have to keep in mind that not everything is, not every product is like a saint in that respect. Like, there are, like, the smart TVs, for example. Like, there was a smart TV that failed to state that the camera and the microphone was on 24/7, and people were thinking, why does that need to be on all the time? No, that's right. The option or the setting to disable that wasn't actually mentioned in the user manual, for example. And people were upset about that, and rightfully so. Like, that's an example of a product that, in my opinion, is sort of breaching a trust with the customer in a lot of ways. Like, you know, you invite a girl over and you're having a nice time, and before you know it, like, you know, you're on camera, smile, and you might not even know about it. Like, it's like things like that as well are another example of what people get so sketched out about, because yeah, it's like no one likes being constantly watched. Like, if you know, stare at someone from across a room, they're going to get uncomfortable. They're going to look at you and say, you know, what are you looking at? And it's a very similar thing with technology now. Like, if we know that there's something, you know, if we know there's a microphone constantly listening to us, or there's a camera that's constantly on us, obviously it's going to be a little bit unsettling. So there is obviously, you do have to differentiate when it comes to things like that.
Yeah, and it's a trust thing as well. So, for example, Chris, you got an Alexa, right, and you use it quite a lot.
Yeah.
Do you ever say like, does it give you the option to say like mute microphone? Can you say like a command like that?
Yeah. Well, you can press the button on top of it. Yeah.
Is that what you'd normally do? Press the button and then it was off. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just
well,
wondering.
I wouldn't normally do it. I just keep it on at all times.
Keep it on. But let's say there was a I don't know. Okay, Alexa, please mute microphone. Let's say, and then it says microphone muted. You're putting trust in that command as well. So the way to think of it is like how you trust an alarm clock on your phone to wake you up, right? You've set the time in for 7:13 or 7:15 or whatever it is. You're trusting that phone's going to do that. You've also trusting the microphone to be off. You're trusting the cameras to be in privacy mode. So there is a lot of trust there that's maybe people should be a bit more skeptical of.
It's blind trust, almost
blind trust, but I think people are kind of aware that, like, hey, you know, if people, it's quite hard to explain, but
more people are conscious of it now, I think.
You don't worry about your phone having your alarm clock set. You just assume that it's going to be there and go off when it has to. Maybe people should think the same about privacy of cameras and microphones and stuff. That's all.
And that brings up a whole new issue of our reliance on technology. Like, there is, like we said, there's that trust, and there's the assumption that things are the way we assume them to be, and you know that is a whole new talk in its own right. I won't trail off, but yeah, like, it is. I think definitely in today's age, with all of this tech that's being released, and you know, all of these changes that we're seeing, I think it is important to be aware of things like that as well. And it's, you know, it is important to think about it, like, not just, you know, it's assumption is not a good, that's not a good like trait to exhibit. You shouldn't assume things. Like, you wouldn't, if you're sat talking to your friend, you're not going to assume a certain thing. If you tell them a secret, you're not just going to assume that they're not going to tell anyone. You know, you're careful before you share that secret, right?
That's why you make them pinky promise.
Yeah, that's it. Sacred. But yeah, it's things like that. Like, you can't just assume that everything is the way it says it is, and things are always going to be as trustworthy as they may look, because they might all. But at the same time, with some things, how do you know when they aren't? You know, that's the problem, and you can't like live your whole life worrying that like every bit of tech in your house is, you know, doing the dirty on you. It's, once again, perfect medium, hard to find.